Jade plant problems and pests. How to save a dying Crassula Ovata fast. Hey there, green souls. Welcome back to Earthly Delights, or if you're new here, I'm truly glad you found us. You know, most people who wander into this little corner of the internet share something in common. You long for calm moments, a breath of nature inside your busy home, and maybe even a gentle sense of accomplishment, watching something you've nurtured grow. Maybe you're a curious beginner who recently fell in love with succulents, or a seasoned plant parent always on the hunt for the next secret to lush leaves and thriving roots. Either way, today's story is especially for you. We're diving into a fascinating little world where patience, subtle change, and silent green companionship teach us more than we expect. And at the heart of it all, the humble jade plant. By the end of this journey, you'll see why every shriveled leaf, every new sprout, carries lessons not just for your plant, but for your own life. So make yourself a cup of tea, settle in, and don't forget to subscribe to Earthly Delights, because your next leafy victory might just start here. 1. The underestimated hero. Why we adore the jade plant. Let me take you into a story that might feel surprisingly familiar. Picture this: a small jade plant, perched proudly on your kitchen counter, or maybe near a sun-dappled window in your living room. Perhaps it was a gift from a friend who knows you're trying to bring a little more life indoors. Or maybe you spotted it at the garden center, those plump, glossy leaves almost smiling up at you, just begging to come home. What many of us overlook is how this humble Crassula Ovata, the jade plant, becomes so much more than decoration. For people like you, people who crave pockets of calm in a chaotic world, who find joy in tending, trimming, and sometimes even talking to your plants, the jade is an unassuming teacher. It stands quietly, reminding us to slow down. Unlike those flashy, fast-growing vines or bright bloomers, a jade grows at its own thoughtful pace, and in doing so, teaches patience to even the most restless of us. You see, jade plants are resilient, almost stubborn in their will to survive. Miss a watering, forget to fuss over it for weeks, it's still there, steadfast, forgiving you silently. And that's why we adore them. They're little living metaphors of gentle strength, right in our homes, proving that thriving often happens quietly, steadily, and without fanfare. Stay with me, because next, we'll decode the secret language of those shiny leaves, the tiny clues your jade shares to tell you exactly how it feels. 2. The secret language of leaves, what your jade is trying to tell you. Isn't it amazing how plants speak without ever uttering a word? If you've been growing indoor greenery for a while, you already know there's a quiet dialogue happening. And jade plants in particular have a subtle yet captivating way of expressing themselves, if only we learn to listen. Take a close look at those fleshy leaves. When they're plump and glossy, they're practically beaming, saying, "I have everything I need right now." It's like a content sigh after a hearty meal. But run your fingers along them and feel a thinness, a slight wrinkling. That's your jade whispering, "Hey, I'm getting thirsty over here." Then there's the beautiful transformation that happens with light. Have you noticed a faint red outline tracing the edges of your jade's leaves? That's not damage. That's your plant's way of blushing under a healthy dose of sun, much like we catch a rosy glow after a walk outdoors. On the flip side, deep green leaves often tell you they're lounging in more shade, happily conserving energy. For all of us who've made nurturing plants a part of our personal peace, learning this secret language feels like unlocking a new level of closeness. It's proof that these green companions are anything but passive. They're constantly responding, adjusting, reaching out to tell us their needs. In just a moment, we'll explore one of the jade's most dramatic ways of communicating, when it starts to stretch and lean, almost like it's dancing for a better spotlight. Stay with me. 3. Stretching and leaning. The jade's slow dance towards light. Now here's where the jade plant becomes almost poetic. If you've ever walked into your living room one morning and found your jade arching dramatically to one side, you might have chuckled or even worried. But really, this is your jade plant's gentle ballet, its instinctual dance toward the nearest source of light. See, when your jade isn't getting quite enough sun, it doesn't simply sit there sulking. It stretches, elongates, sometimes with long, bare spaces between leaves, all in an earnest attempt to soak up more brightness. This is called etiolation, a big word for a simple truth. Your plant is hungry for light. And if you're like many viewers of Earthly Delights, you probably see your plants almost like family. So noticing this graceful reach is like watching a loved one reach for something just out of grasp. Tender, a little heart-tugging, and a clear signal they need your help. But the fix can be beautifully simple. Just rotate your jade a little each week, almost like turning pages in a slow story, so every side gets its share of sunshine. Or maybe you'll decide to shift it closer to that cheerful east-facing window. In doing this, you're not just preventing a lopsided plant, you're keeping it strong and balanced, able to stand tall on its own sturdy trunk. Up next, we'll explore a different kind of drama. The kind that comes not from too little light, but from too much love. Stick around, because we're about to dive into the delicate art of watering, and how too much affection can sometimes drown these silent green friends. 4. When too much love turns lethal. Overwatering tragedies. Watering. It's where so many tender-hearted plant lovers stumble. If you're anything like the wonderful viewers who gather here at Earthly Delights, you probably care deeply about your plants. You check on them daily, give them words of encouragement, maybe even stroke their leaves as you pass by. And often, that care spills over into the watering can. But here's the tender irony. Jade plants come from hardy, sun-baked places where rain is a rare gift, not a daily expectation. So when we shower them with water too often, hoping to nurture, we sometimes do the opposite. Their roots sit in soggy soil, the leaves swell with excess moisture, and before long, those once plump emerald gems develop brown spots, or worse, turn mushy and collapse under the weight of our overzealous affection. Think of it like forcing your jade to wear a soaked coat for days on end. No one would be happy with that, least of all your delicate plant. The soil needs to breathe, to dry out fully before you offer that next drink. And if you've noticed your jade dropping leaves at the slightest nudge, or if the stems feel oddly soft, it's your plant waving a quiet flag. Please, give me a little space. In the next chapter of our journey, I'll show you how to strike that beautiful balance, to offer just enough water at just the right moment, so your jade can flourish without fear of drowning. Stay close, your leafy companion's future might depend on it. 5. Desert plant with drama. Underwatering plus humidity surprises. But on the flip side, underestimating your jade's thirst can bring a different kind of quiet trouble. You see, because jades are so stoic, those thick leaves storing precious water like tiny canteens, it's easy to assume they can endure anything. Many indoor gardeners, especially those who've learned hard lessons about overwatering, swing too far in the opposite direction. Days stretch into weeks, and suddenly, your jade's once firm leaves look shriveled, puckered, like little dried apples. It's almost theatrical how they signal distress. And if you're one of the many who live in a humid climate, that extra moisture in the air can mask how quickly soil actually dries. Your jade might be standing in a seemingly lush environment, yet beneath the surface, its roots are parched and reaching desperately for a sip. Some viewers of Earthly Delights have even shared stories of aerial roots popping up, ghostly tendrils searching the air for humidity when the soil just isn't cutting it. It's a hauntingly beautiful reminder of how these plants adapt, quietly fighting for survival. But don't worry, this drama has an easy rescue. A deep, thorough watering, allowing excess to drain freely, often restores jade leaves to their supple, cheerful selves within days. In our next chapter, we'll explore what happens when sunlight, salts, and even the water we use leave their own marks, turning jade leaves into tiny canvases painted with scars and spots. So keep watching. Your jade's next secret is just around the corner. 6. Burnt, blistered, and salty. The many faces of leaf damage. Now let's wander into another chapter of your jade's quiet story. One written right on the leaves. Maybe you've spotted crispy brown edges, little burnt freckles, or even strange white specks sprinkled across the green. Each mark is like a journal entry, recording exactly what your jade has been through. Think of sunburn first. Just like us on a beach without sunscreen, jade leaves can scorch when suddenly exposed to intense light. Those lovely red-tinted edges we talked about earlier? That's healthy sun-kissed color. But when the sun's embrace turns harsh, it carves painful brown patches that won't heal. They'll only fade as new, unblemished leaves grow in. It's a bittersweet lesson. Gradual introductions to brighter spots keep your jade beautifully blushed, not burned. And then there's the issue of salts, a sneaky culprit. If your tap water is heavy with minerals, or if fertilizer builds up in the soil over time, your jade will wear the evidence. Tiny white crystals on the surface of the leaves or crusts around the pot are like the residue on a well-used kettle. It tells you that over time, salts have been left behind, drawing moisture from leaf cells and causing burns. But there's gentle magic in the fix. A simple rinse with collected rainwater or letting your tap water sit out overnight to let chlorine escape can transform how your jade feels. In the next stretch of our journey together, we'll dive into some of the smallest yet most troublesome visitors, tiny insects that see your jade as an irresistible feast. So stay close, you won't want to miss how to guard your green friend from these hidden intruders. 7. Tiny vampires, pests, and the quiet horror of infestations. Let's lean in a little closer now, because sometimes the jade's troubles aren't caused by too much sun or misguided watering. Sometimes it's something far more sinister. Tiny, creeping invaders that treat your precious plant like an all-you-can-eat buffet. If you've ever noticed delicate white fluff hiding in the nooks of your jade's leaves, almost like stray bits of cotton, it's not harmless dust. That's often the calling card of mealybugs. Tiny vampires that pierce the plant's flesh and slowly sip away its life force. Or maybe you've spotted mysterious brown bumps along the stems, stuck like tiny barnacles. Those are scale insects, equally determined to feast in silence. It's a quiet horror show, really. They drain sap, excrete sticky honeydew that invites mold, and weaken your jade bit by bit. Many plant lovers in our Earthly Delights family have confessed the heartbreak of watching their once glossy jade become a pale shadow under pest assault. But there's hope in careful vigilance. A monthly ritual of checking under leaves and along stems becomes your jade's best line of defense. And if you spot the invaders early, a swipe of rubbing alcohol or a gentle spray of insecticidal soap can turn the tide. Soon, we'll explore the bittersweet art of knowing when to trim, to cut away damage so new life can flourish. So don't wander off just yet. Your jade's resilient story is still unfolding. 8. The last resort, cutting losses to grow anew. Sometimes, despite all our careful tending and gentle hopes, parts of our jade simply can't be saved. Maybe it's a stem that's turned mushy from hidden rot, or leaves so scarred by sunburn or pests that they've lost their spark. And this is where our role shifts from nurturer to compassionate gardener, knowing when to let go so new life can take its place. Think of it as the jade's version of pruning away old chapters. Taking a clean pair of scissors or shears and trimming above the rot or damage can feel a little painful, especially if you've watched that branch grow from a tiny nub. But it's also a chance to start fresh. Those cuttings, if left to callus and then set in water or fresh soil, often become entirely new plants, carrying forward your jade's story in a vibrant new direction. Many viewers here on Earthly Delights have shared how these rescued cuttings brought them unexpected joy. Some even passed them along to friends or neighbors, turning a moment of plant heartbreak into a gift that brightened someone else's home. And isn't that just beautiful? Your jade's struggles can blossom into second chances, not just for the plant, but for new connections. Little acts of green generosity that ripple outward. In our final chapter, we'll bring all of this full circle and see how tending your jade becomes a mirror for your own patient, hopeful growth. So stay with me, there's something special waiting right at the end. 9. A gentle future, tending jade as a self-growth practice. And here we are, at perhaps the most touching part of this little jade journey. Because if you step back and really look at it, caring for a jade plant isn't only about coaxing out healthy roots or glossy leaves. It's about the quiet lessons it hands back to you, day after day. Every time you pause to check the soil's moisture, adjust its position toward the sun, or wipe away a bit of dust, you're practicing patience. You're choosing to slow down, to be fully present with something that grows on its own mysterious timetable. And that's a rare gift in a world constantly urging us to rush, to produce, to keep scrolling. Many of you watching right now, our Earthly Delights family, share this tender trait. You find joy in tiny victories, a new cluster of leaves unfolding, or roots delicately threading through clear water during propagation. You celebrate resilience, both in your plants and in yourselves. And isn't that the real magic? As your jade learns to adapt, reaching for light, shedding old leaves, and quietly enduring setbacks, so do you. It becomes a living reminder that thriving often means weathering dry spells and bouncing back from damage stronger than before. In just a moment, we'll wrap all this up, and I'll invite you to share your own jade stories with us. Because your green journey might inspire someone else who's just beginning. So, stay right here. We're about to bring this full circle back to the viewer's life. So here we are, full circle, standing alongside our humble jade, wiser for all it's quietly taught us. Maybe now, when you glance over at your own plant, you'll see more than just a decorative splash of green. You'll notice a companion that's been growing right alongside you, weathering dry days and bursts of sun, patiently adapting, just like you do in your own life. I'd love to hear your stories. Have you nursed a jade back from the brink? Or maybe faced the heartbreak of losing one and started over with hopeful cuttings? Drop your experiences in the comments, because here on Earthly Delights, your journey can light the way for someone else who's just beginning theirs. If this little green tale brought you comfort or sparked new ideas, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. There's so much more growing to do together, and I truly can't wait to see where your next leafy adventure leads.